In this video, I'm going to show you how to 3D model and prototype a 3D printable Collet Clip, just like this one right here. I broke something on my FL Sun Super Racer, and when I was changing the parts, I lost one of the two small clips that go on either end of the Bowden tube. And when I couldn't find any spares laying around, I decided to just 3D print one. But instead of finding one online, I thought it would be fun to make it myself and then sort of prototype and make it work, and sort of show you my process as I go. I will be using Autodesk Fusion to 3D model and Ultimaker Cura to slice my prints, but you can very easily use similar softwares to do the same thing. So if you've ever been curious about 3D modeling your own 3D prints, this series is meant to show you my whole design process from beginning to end. So let's go ahead and give this a try. And the first thing we need to do is figure out what is the size of our collet here. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap a dial caliper around the diameter. And it looks like it's almost ½ an inch exactly if you look at this dial caliper. And so we can go ahead and start with that. So I'm going to start a sketch on this bottom plane here. And I'm going to grab my circle tool. And I'm going to sketch it out. It looks like we're in millimeters, so let me go ahead and change that in my document settings to inches. And hit OK and try this again. And we're just going to type in 0.5. And then let's see here. How wide is this outer circle over here? If we wrap the style caliper around the edge there, you'll notice that I'm not getting the entire thing. I just want that top piece there. And it looks like it is about 0.06 inches. Let's go ahead and go back into Fusion. And so I'm going to find my offset tool. Let's zoom in. And we want to bring it inside 0.06. And make sure we're going inside, so we want a negative 0.06. And hit enter. And then how tall is this thing? And it looks like it's almost exactly 0.1 inches. So let's go ahead and round up to 0.1. So we'll finish our sketch. Go to my home view and hit extrude, and let's go up 0.1 and hit OK. And so what else is going on this thing? Well, if you look here, you'll notice that this outer circle, this bigger outer circle that I just drew, is actually the same as this circle of this bigger piece. And actually this view is perfect to see it if I use my mouse. Can I get my mouse over here? You can see that the circles are actually the exact same diameter, the exact same radius. And so that's going to be pretty easy. Let's go ahead and start a sketch on this top face. And what I want to do is grab my line tool and I want to lock it on to this inner edge and draw it back, click out, and then draw another one, making sure I connect it to this edge. I'm going to right click and hit OK, and I'm going to find my horizontal and vertical constraint. And I'm going to tell this line to always be horizontal. Right click, cancel, and I'm going to grab my construction line tool. I'm going to find the center of this. Once it magnetizes, I'm going to click and drag it down to my origin. I'm going to right click and hit OK, and I'm going to tell this line to be vertical as well by going to my horizontal vertical constraint and clicking on this line. And what does that do? Well, it tells this to be centered. So no matter how wide I make this, it is always now centered. Okay, and so the question is well, how wide do I want to make it? And so we grab our dial caliper, and we wrap it around this edge here. And what do we get? We get about 0.3, a little bit wider than 0.3. We can round down that measurement to 0.3. And so I'm going to give this a dimension of 0.3. And so the last thing we have to ask ourselves is how far back does this go? That's a little bit harder to figure out, but we can kind of guesstimate it. So I'm going to wrap it around this sort of center edge there. And what do we get? We get almost exactly 0.1. And so it's probably not exactly 0.1, but it's probably close enough that it's not going to matter. Let's go ahead and go back to a small screen. And let's go to dimension. And I want a dimension from this. And so actually I'm going to right click and cancel. I'm going to grab my point tool. And I'm going to put a point down at the intersection of my construction line and this inner edge here. And I want to measure from this dot now. So dimension from this dot to this line, what is that dimension going to be? 0.1. Now, if we look at this, it's clearly filleted here on the back walls, but I'm actually going to add the fillets after I extrude it, I think. Let's look at this again. It clearly extrudes down and up. Okay, and so how do we go down and up? Well, we're going to finish our sketch, go to our home view. I want to extrude this down, and I want it to go all the way to the bottom. So I'm going to go to Object and click on the bottom so that it extrudes all the way down. And then I also want it to go up. So I'm going to change this from one side to two sides. And so where's the other direction going to go? Well, it's going to go this way, and I don't want to forget this profile. So I'm going to go ahead and select that as well. And I want to go ahead and make sure that this is a join. So I want to move this out of the way, go to join. And then the question is how high do I want to go here? And so how tall is this thing? But it looks like it goes up a little bit more than 0.225. Looks like it's 0.235. I'm going to go ahead and round that down to 0.225. So let's go ahead and go back here. And we want this to go up. We'll say this is the negative direction in this case, but negative 0.225. And so now it's starting to look a little bit like this shape here. Let's remove our dial caliper and take a look at it. And so what do we need now? Well, we need that inside smaller circle. And so let's go ahead and figure out the diameter of this. So what do? We stick the top of our dial caliper inside, and we pull it apart until we get the diameter. And you can see how far apart, if we look at it from the top view, you can see how far apart, by using the same measuring of this dial caliper, the ends of this inner circle is. And what is it? It looks like it is 0.225. Okay. And so we go back to our small view again. And I am going to start a sketch. This time I'm going to go, I think, from the bottom, because this is extruding from the bottom if you look at it. And so I'm going to draw a circle and tell it to be 0.225. And I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to extrude this shape upwards. And the question becomes, well, how far up do I want to go? And so we grab our dial caliper and we take a look. And how tall is this inner circle here? And so we look at it. It looks like it is about 0.05. Okay. And so this is in the negative direction in this case, so negative 0.05. While we're looking at this, you'll notice that the inner circle on the bottom comes a little bit closer together than the top outer circle, but both get cut off before they complete as a circle. You'll notice this one finishes as a circle, but this one sort of finishes as a circle, then almost a straight line there. So let's go ahead and mess with this smaller inner circle first. And so how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to start a new sketch on this face, and once again, I'm going to grab my line tool, and I'm going to connect it to this inner edge here and drag it down. And I'm going to move my screen over a little bit. Click, click, click. And just like before, I want to make sure all my lines are horizontal or vertical. And so now we can see that this is perpendicular. I can check. It says sketch geometry is over constrained. All that means is that it already has that constraint. Cancel. I want to turn on construction. Click on my line tool. And just like before, select my origin and the center of this line down here. And click. When it magnetizes, right click OK. And I just want to make sure that this line is vertical. And once I have it vertical, you can see that it's always going to be centered because this line is vertical and stuck to the center. Okay, and then the question is, well, how far apart are these edges here from here to here? And to figure that out, we're going to go to the top jaws of our dial caliper again. And let's see here. If you look, I'm on the inside here of this. It looks like it goes about 0.2. So we're going to go ahead and round up to 0.2. And so we'll go to dimension from here to here is 0.2. And then how far out should we go? Well, it really doesn't matter at this point as long as we're not inside. It can be way down here. We're going to be cutting out all of this space. I'm going to go ahead and give this some dimension because I'm sort of OCD and I want this sketch to be fully constrained because it is proper practice. But it could be 0.3, it could be 0.4. Both of these do the same thing. It could be 0.25, I think. And it looks like that is just over the line. And so, yes, I'm going to go ahead and go to 0.3 just to be safe. And I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to extrude this shape here. And I want to make sure I select the entire profile, and I want to go symmetric so that I'm cutting out the entire thing. And now it's really starting to look like this part if I go into full screen here. And this top circle cuts off a little bit sooner than that, you can see. But it's really starting to look like it. Okay, let's continue on and let's cut out the part of this top face that's supposed to be missing. And so to do that, I'm going to start a new sketch on this face. And just like before, we're going to grab a line tool that connects to this edge right here, draws down, comes out, and then connects to this edge as well. And you'll notice that it's not actually magnetizing. It wanted to magnetize there, but that looks like that's a tangent. I don't like tangents in this specific thing. I definitely don't want it to be. And so why isn't it connecting? I'm going to right click and hit cancel. Why did it connect to this edge, but not this edge? And the answer is because I'm drawing on this face over here, which is not contiguous to this face over here. And so it doesn't actually see this line in my sketching plane. And sometimes that happens. And when it happens, when you can't lock on to the edges, all you need to do is go to Create, Project, Project Geometry, or hit P on your keyboard. And it opens up this Project feature. I'm going to go ahead and select that edge right there and hit OK. And now if I grab my line tool and I try to connect, you can see that that geometry very clearly exists. Right click OK. Make sure my lines are horizontal and vertical for myself. And just like before, I'm going to grab my line tool and my construction line. I want to make sure that it's centered. So we find that center, tell this to be vertical. And so now, just like before, it's always going to be centered. And the question is, well, how far apart, if I go to my home view, we can see this better. How far apart is this top edge to this top edge? And what do we get here? And yes, I get 0.325, it looks like. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to Fusion. And let's give this a dimension of 0.325. And once again, it doesn't really matter how far away this line is, as long as it's not inside the edge here. I'm going to go ahead and just give it some random dimension. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to right click and hit cancel and finish my sketch. And go ahead and extrude this and this. And you'll notice that I can't actually select that. That's weird. Let's see why I can't select that. If we go back into the sketch, it looks like I actually didn't quite finish this shape here. And so let's go ahead and grab my line tool. I'm going to go ahead and connect to here. And so now we have this whole shape by drawing this line. It looks like when I projected this, I didn't also project these other edges, and so it wasn't seeing these as lines within my sketch. But again, I was drawing on this face, so it saw it over here, but not over here. No big deal. You just have to edit your geometry a little bit. We hit extrude again, and it looks like I'm selecting a little bit more, but that actually doesn't matter all that much because it's still effectively, if we look, only cutting out the part that we need it to. And so how far is this going to go down? Well, it's going to go down to this edge right here. So we'll go to Object and make sure we select this and cut it down. And now you can see it's really starting to look like this shape here. But there's some extra little tidbits about this that we need to take into consideration. It looks like it's rounded off in all of the places. And so, like, for example, in the back, it's very rounded off, so we can add a fillet here. I think 0.05 is probably a good amount compared to what we're looking at in this. And then if we look here, you'll see that it's very rounded off here and here. And so, well, how much is it rounded off in these places? Well, we'll grab our fillet tool and we'll click on these edges. And let's bring them in just a little bit. And I would think, let's go ahead and go to our top view. I would think that 0.025 actually does look pretty good here. And so if we go back and we look at this, and maybe this is 0.025, but this is a little bit smaller. So maybe we hit cancel and we try it again. And maybe this is 0.025 here and here. And then we add a new fillet here and here. And maybe this is only 0.01. We'll go back full screen and take another look. And it is sort of rounded off on all the other inside edges as well. It's not very sharp. And so we come back and we add our fillets here and here and these other edges too. And let's just give this a small fillet of 0.01. And I forgot to grab these ones, so I'll go ahead and grab these as well. 0.01 and hit OK. And that just sort of gives it this sort of softness. And actually with this, I actually wanted to do, I think, these edges as well. If we look at it again, you can see it sort of rounds in here. And if we go 0.025, what happens? Or I will actually want 10 times more. And that way it just sort of enters in with that sort of rounding effect and hit OK. I think this is pretty good. What do we need to do now? Well, we need to export it. So I'm going to go to File, Export. I should probably save it first. Let's make sure. Let's go ahead and save it. And we'll just call it our FL Sun. Call it. And then I'm going to go to File, Export. Make sure I have SDL file selected, and I'm really supposed to have some sort of save file. I just put it in my downloads and hit export. So let's go ahead and go to Cura. And on my Ender 3 S1, let's drop this file in. And select the STL file we just exported. And you can see that it imported in sideways. Sometimes that happens. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this so that it's flat by clicking on this and clicking on the bottom here. And let's actually go ahead and do 2. And then what am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to slice. And it looks like it'll print super fast in 10 minutes, and I'll let you know how it goes. And so here we have the first 3D printed part. You can see that they're actually pretty close to identical in size. Somehow it ended up being a little bit taller. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And we can adjust that because it doesn't really matter. As you can see, when I tried to put it on, it went on to 1 just fine. It went onto the top Bowden tube, but the pneumatic connector at the actual hot end is a little bit different. I guess it's a different manufacturer that made it. It doesn't quite fit on there. And I could move on from here because I have this original that does work, and I could just use this on the bottom. But I want the one that I make to work on, pretty much universally. So let's keep working at this. And so as you saw, that one actually broke when I tried putting it on the bottom. It snapped around. And so why did that happen? Well, if I look at this more closely, what I notice is it's kind of inclined. And so I'm thinking, and it's kind of hard to see, I'm not exactly getting it to focus very well. If you look, you can see that it slightly inclines in. And so let's see if we can't figure that out. And so we go back into Fusion here. I want to go back. Actually, let's just go ahead and delete these extra fillets that are in my way. I can always add them back later. Delete that fillet, and I guess the fillet after. And I'm going to delete that fillet as well. And what I want to do is I want to add that little incline. So let's go ahead and add a chamfer. There it is. And click on these two edges, and let's sort of let it incline up a little bit and hit OK. And then we can add those extra fillets back. And I think this one will hopefully do better. Let's go ahead and save it. And file, export as an STL. And let's give this a try and hit slice. Looks like this one will only take 5 minutes. That makes sense because I don't have 2 of them this time. And I will let you know how it goes. Okay, and so we have the new one here. Let's move these out of the way. And as you can see, it is slightly inclined, but it doesn't quite look as good as the one in Fusion here. So if we look, the inclines aren't quite so prevalent. That was one of the problems, it looks like, as you can see in the video when I'm trying to insert it on, is that it goes on the first connector just like the first prototype did. But it has a hard time sliding on in the first place. And I think that's because, like I said, the chamfers are not very pronounced. And then the second problem is that I did find that I could force this one onto the bottom connector without breaking it, but it was a very tight fit. So let's go ahead and work on both problems. And let's fix the tight fit first. And I think it's tight because the inner part is too tall. So let's go ahead and go back to Fusion. Move this off to the side just a little bit. And instead of trying to fix these fillets and chamfers, let's go back in time to when we extruded this face up. And I know our measurement was 0.05. Let's actually go down a little bit. Let's go down, and let's move this over to 0.04. And so now it's not quite so tall, so hopefully it'll fit better. And it looks like that messed up that last fillet, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that fillet, and we can put that fillet down again. So let's go ahead and hit save. And then after it's saved, we can go to File, Export, and hit Export. But then there's one other thing I want to do, because even though I'm making this whole thing a little bit shorter so that hopefully it'll fit, again, you'll notice the incline doesn't show up very much. I suspect that has something to do with the layer height of the way I'm printing it. And so if we bring this away and we look in Cura and upload the newest version, and just like before, we're going to rotate this flat, and then instead of just slicing it, I'm actually going to change it from standard quality to a super quality so that it has a smaller layer height. I'm going to go ahead and keep my changes. It actually prints it, you can see it now, it takes 9 minutes, and if we look in our preview, it actually gives you just extra layers, and so it prints in a smaller amount. It prints a little bit slower, and each layer builds up a little bit slower, so it'll be a lot more precise as it's creating that incline there. And so I will let you know how this one goes.
A little later.
And so this third prototype, you can see, it's a lot more detailed. First off, it's a little bit shorter on the inside here. That was probably a big deal. When you look at me connecting it, you can see that it clearly works perfectly. And so I have a working one. And while I was putting it on, you'll notice how tall this is. Especially when I lay it right next to the other one, you can see how tall it is. And I actually realized what the problem was. If you look, if I stack it on top of the other, they're almost the exact same height. And so when I extruded this up, I went up 0.25, I guess, from this edge, but this is 0.25 in height in total. And so what I should have actually done, and we can actually fix this right now in Fusion if we go back to that extrusion, this one right here. If we look, how tall is this edge? Well, actually, we can go find that out. I don't remember my dimensions. How tall did we say this was? This was 0.1. So if this is 0.1 and the whole thing is 0.225, then we really only need to go up 0.125. And hit Finish Sketch. With that in mind, the one I have functionally works. So I don't need to print the new one, but I will be exporting the most up-to-date version and posting it on Thingiverse. But with that, we're done. So let me go ahead and save this newest version. And yes, I could have just found one of these clips online and 3D printed that. But there are plenty of things out there that there aren't files for. Or maybe there are files, but they aren't exactly the way you need them. And my goal for this series is to show you how I would go about designing and editing those things. If you enjoyed this lesson and want to see more like it, do me a favor and hit that like button, and please consider subscribing. Also, if you have any suggestions for what functional 3D prints I should design and prototype next, please leave a comment down below letting me know.